Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Delonte Woods, touchdown! ISB!
A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn Emmy winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Welcome aboard Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday. It's December 14th. Hope you're getting all of your Christmas shopping done and all of your sports wishes are coming true. Welcome aboard. We appreciate you being with us. As always, Jim Coyle, your host. And, of course, Indiana Sports Beat Radio brought to you by Andy Moore Honda. John's keeping us between the white lines today, as always. And plenty to get to. A lot to talk about. A loaded deck of guests. Mike Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald-Times will join us. Tyler Smith from the Hoosier.com. Chris Denary, of course, from the Indiana Pacers. And Shannon Griffith joins us to talk about Indiana football. And I might as well remind you that tomorrow, man, oh man, you want to talk about a loaded day. Bob Kravitz, of course, Zach Kravitz, Zach Osterman from the Indy Star as well. Pat Graham and Sharon Wilkerson tomorrow together. They play this weekend. Sharon Wilkerson, the head coach at Jeffersonville. Pat is an assistant for Evansville Memorial, and they clash tomorrow in a game. No, Saturday, I think, in a game. Memorial plays someone else on Friday. That's very interesting. I got to pull that back up. I can't remember. But a loaded docket today as well. The NFL owners vote to double their international games in 2025 from 4 to 8. They're going to Brazil for the first time, to Sao Paulo, Brazil, in the Corinthians. They'll play in the Corinthians arena. John, you know what that means?
The Corinthians Arena. The only Corinthians I'm aware of is the biblical Corinthians.
Well, what I was going to say, and this joke will fly over your head, unfortunately, but they should have very, very good leather seats. Rich Corinthian leather seat. That was an old commercial from I think it was an old Pontiac Buick commercial, or the guy that was on the original guy that was on Fantasy Island with that rich Corinthian leather. He would always say that. Pretty funny. Matt Rule picking up quarterbacks in Nebraska. Does Kenny Payne last the season down in Louisville? Man, things are going south for them as they lose to Arkansas State, down by 20 at the half. We'll talk about that. The Big Ten and college basketball results overall. The IU football portal action picking up. You've got guys that are coming back. And we've got basketball gate with the Pacers last night. I don't know if you saw that.
I saw Dustin DePirick was tweeting about the happenings in Basketball Gate. I didn't get all the details, but it sounded very inept.
No, it was just kind of funny, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Giannis Antetokounmpo put up I guess it was a career high, maybe 64 points last night. But this was also Oscar Tshiebwe's first official NBA point. So they took the game ball. The Pacers took the game ball, and it was a franchise record for Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's 64 points. But Rick Carlisle said there was a misunderstanding about the game ball. It was Oscar Tshiebwe's first official NBA point. We always get the game ball. We were not thinking about Giannis' franchise record. Unfortunate situation, Carlisle said during the post-game press conference. Oscar Tshiebwe, who was an undrafted rookie, was a college basketball legend, particularly with the down there in Kentucky. And there's instinctively nothing wrong with the Pacers wanting to get him the ball. However, Antetokounmpo just scored 64 points to establish a new career high and franchise record for the Bucks in their massive 140-126 victory. So Antetokounmpo, it was just funny. I just find it funny. But don't they use more than one ball?
You know, we had this discussion, not you and I, but I've had this discussion with somebody else because there were Kentucky fans, believe it or not, who were there was a very similar situation about game balls being left at the scores table and using a different one, something like that, and people not realizing that there are more than one game ball, or at least there should be at least.
Well, I would actually think that I know in football it's constant. There is no such thing as a game ball. Those balls are each team has like a half a dozen ready to go. So, and each team plays with their own ball. So it's just funny. But I understand. But yeah, I would think that there would be more than one ball. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm wrong a lot. So you got that going for you this morning. Basketball gate with the Pacers and the NFL heading. Man, it's not if, but when they put a team somewhere outside of the country, which is kind of wild to think of an American sports franchise or pro organization with an international team, but they are heading in that way without question. Purposely, they are very diligent in what they do. Everything that they do is measured, I guess you should say. So how that will work, I think it'll be, will American football ever reach the level of international football? There's a question for you, John.
I don't mean to sound obvious here, I feel like, but I don't think it'd be possible for any sport to ever surpass international football, because at the apex of football or soccer is a tournament that will never be matched in terms of scale, and that's the World Cup. You will never have a sport that has a bracketed format tournament that brings the entire globe together for a month and a half the way that the soccer World Cup does. Or, I say soccer because I'm not trying to confuse the two footballs for those who don't talk about it as much, but I don't think. I mean, yeah, I know the NFL is trying to globalize it by playing games in different countries and stuff like that. But as established as European football is, it's never going to be surpassed. It may be challenged, but it won't ever be. Nothing will ever overtake soccer as the global sport that it is.
I agree with you. A little more NBA news. The NBA has suspended Draymond Green indefinitely.
Did you see that hit? Did you see why he got suspended?
I did not. I've not seen it, but I almost don't need to. I mean, Draymond Green he's borderline insane by being allowed to continue to act in this manner. I mean, this is a guy he's gone beyond being your team thug. He's what do they call it in hockey? Daggone it. Your goon. he's gone beyond being the team goon. He's, I mean, there just has to be a line. I think it was just up here. I just missed it. And the funny thing is, he complains about this stuff as if he's being treated unfairly. It's crazy. I don't know that hit was, I don't know.
Hey, I hate to interfere, and I just saw this from a comment, and then I decided to check Twitter. But the Pacers franchise has just shared that Hall of Famer George McGinnis has passed away, who you all talked extensively about yesterday.
That is really, really sad news. I put out a tweet that he could probably, he still might be the greatest player in Indiana basketball history. Now that's you can't quantify that because he played one season at Indiana. Freshmen were not eligible when he was here, which was the stupidest rule in ever. But so he comes in as a sophomore and becomes the first sophomore to lead the Big Ten in scoring and rebounding at nearly 30 points a game and 14 rebounds a game. Come on. Who does that? He did that as a sophomore. No three-point line. He did that as a sophomore. What it would have just been. He makes what Zach Edey is doing look easy, but just a tough blow to the Indiana family, to the Indiana Pacers, to the state of Indiana. Just one of the absolute great people. As we heard Kyle Nedenrip talk yesterday. He's got to talk to him a lot. And, man, he's just one of those players that people – I don't know that people truly know their greatness because they didn't get to see it as much at certain levels. He left college early because his father had died, and he felt he needed to help take care of the family. And his first year or Bob Knight's first year would have been his junior season. Think about that. He gets Indiana to the Final Four in 2 years in 73. If he's got George McGinnis, good Lord. I mean, it's crazy, but sad to our thoughts and prayers, of course, are with the McGinnis family, the Pacers, who have lost a couple of great ones over the last couple of years with Mr. Boom Baby and now George McGinnis, two of the all-time greats in the sport, definitely in the state of Indiana. Both played for Indiana, both Indiana natives. And man, like I said, I can't remember when he was on the show, but I was fortunate, very, very, very fortunate to have had George McGinnis on. Super nice guy. I remember meeting him, and he is just a humble guy, or was a humble person, and just one of the most well-liked as well. 1969 Indiana Mr. Basketball. He was Mr. Basketball USA, which I didn't even know was a thing. But he had complications from cardiac arrest last week at his home, and unfortunately, He starred on the unbeaten Indianapolis-Washington high school team that won the 1969 state championship, along with Steve Downing, I believe. He led the Big Ten in scoring and rebounding as a sophomore, his only year that he was the first year he was able to play, but the only year he played. Then he helped guide the Pacers to 2 of their 3 ABA championships. Early on as well, he was the ABA's most valuable player with Dr. J in the 1974-75 season, which would that have been his senior year or in college? But McGinnis then moved on to Philadelphia and the NBA, where he was twice named an All-Star. He played for the Denver Nuggets before returning back to the Pacers, closing his 11-year professional career in 1982. He is one of only 4 Pacers, along with Rogers Brown, Mel Daniels, and Reggie Miller, to have his Pacer jersey, number 30, retired. Only 4 jerseys retired from that franchise. He was, of course, inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame in 2017. Big 6'8". Man, he defined the position of power forward, but man, he was smooth as silk. The All-Star game, one of the greats. There was a reference by a Kentucky player that they played that said, and I think and Slick Leonard, who I was talking about earlier, but there was a comment made by one of the Kentucky players. He ain't that bad. He ain't that good. The next game they played, he goes for 53 points and 30 rebounds, I believe. Yeah. So he kind of put that to rest. That they pissed him off, and that was down, and he did it down in Louisville's Freedom Hall, of all places. So, like Larry Bird, he was plagued by severe back issues later in life, but one of the best guys around. And just hate to lose. You hate to lose those guys. And our hearts and prayers are with the family. Like I said, he was a great from the very beginning. He was an All-American from the beginning. You heard Rick Bozich yesterday say he was the greatest player that he's ever seen. And I wish I would have gotten to see him play. I can tell you that. There are many people that I'll try to talk to over the next couple of days that probably did get to see him play. But man, what a tough loss for the Hoosier State on a weekend where the basketball world will be staring in. And I'm sure that there will be a moment of silence this weekend as Purdue will play in Gainbridge Fieldhouse as they take on number 3 Purdue, takes on number 1 Arizona. Wow, what a matchup that's going to be, by the way. And you've got Indiana hosting number 2 Kansas. But we'll get to all of that and lots more. Like I said, Mike Niziolek on the program today. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the do we not have anybody in this?
No, you don't. That's why I couldn't tell if you knew that or not. Yeah, this is open, and then Mike Niziolek's at 9:10.
God, that sucks having this many people. So you're probably going to have to use maybe. Well, that stinks.
What does?
Well, because
We're fine.
No, I always think of Fort Wayne.
It'll be okay. If I need to fix things, I will.
With that opening.
Yeah, we'll be fine.
Let me check my situation here. No, I got a refill.
I saw they released Signetti's contract yesterday.
Well, I pull that up because I don't have it, and that's something I want to talk about.
Okay. Oops.
All right. Well, I really hate that I didn't have anybody as much people as we have on today. Drives me nuts. I don't know why it drives me nuts. It shouldn't drive me nuts. I can tell you one thing. I was busy last night and I just happened to put the show on Alexa for no reason. I never listen to the show. Never. I learned one thing. I saw someone in a comment a while back say, and they were being funny and nice, and say, well, you're kind of long-winded. I'm like, what are you talking about? And so yesterday's show was in the background because it just kept playing. I forgot to change it. I'm like, oh my God, I don't ever shut up.
I have one thing I've noticed too when we got to come back from break is sometimes whenever you start a segment with a guest, you'll speak for like 2.5 minutes before you let them say anything. Not all the time, but sometimes you do that.
No one, I was like, I was just dumbfounded.
This segment is brought to you by The Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday. Appreciate you being with us. December 14th. Lots to get to on the program today. Mike Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald-Times will be joining us. Tyler Smith from thehoosier.com. Chris Denary from the Pacers. And Shannon Griffith as well. We'll talk some IU football. Lots to talk there. The new contract, Kurt Signetti released. More recruiting news. Lots to talk about. Tomorrow, man, you're not going to win or miss tomorrow. Of course, Bob Kravitz, the incomparable Bob Kravitz, is with us as always. Zach Osterman from the Indy Star. But little bonus for you. Pat Graham and Sharon Wilkerson together, because Pat is an assistant coach down at Evansville Memorial, and they've got a big game tonight, by the way. But tomorrow they play Jeffersonville, who is coached by Sharon Wilkerson, former teammates at Indiana. Former Mr. Basketballs, to be honest with you. And I know that Sharon had his taken away at a different time in Sharon's life. I've never met someone who has done such a 180. Sharon is absolutely one of the most glorious people you could be around, that you could talk to. I get goosebumps talking about Sharon. And it's amazing. And I really wish somehow the Mr. Basketball Committee or whatever it is, foundation, since I think they ended up giving that next it went to was it Kojak or whatever, what was his name? And he ended up having it taken away. So I don't know that they actually officially had a Mr. Basketball for that season. And Sharon quit the team. It was back when he was a different type person. I wish that if that is actually unawarded now, and I need to research that they would go back and give that back to Sharon, just because of what he has done, what he has become, the person he has become. It is what he has done is harder and more honorable than anything I've ever seen. And by that, I mean, Sharon used to be a punk. He quit the all-star team, and that's what I think took away his Mr. Basketball title over a disagreement. He was kind of I don't want to say a wild child, but the 180 he has turned in his life. I love having him on. I can't get him to quit calling me sir and Mr. But that's him. That's his life now. And it is genuine, and it has been for years. He's been a great friend of the show for a couple of years, several years now, and he's always a joy. But to have him and Pat on, they're going at each other. But Memorial also plays someone tonight. And I'm trying to remember who that is. I know that they have they play Heritage Hills Friday night, rather. So you've got Pat Graham going against Trent Sisley. I should have gotten Trent on today. But maybe I'll try to make that happen tomorrow. I doubt it. He's in school, so that'll be too hard to happen. But what a weekend. You want to talk about a great weekend in Indiana in basketball? I've talked about the fact that Purdue is hosting number 3. Purdue is hosting number 1 Arizona at Gainbridge Fieldhouse at the same time that the Colts are hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers over at Lucas Oil Stadium for a very important wild card berth game. And you have Michael Lewis and his Ball State Cardinals taking on the Indiana State Sycamores, who are both off to good starts. That's going to be some more good quality Indiana basketball. Down the road at 12:30, the Indiana Hoosiers are hosting the number 2 Kansas Jayhawks. Okay, well, on Friday night, you've got Evansville Memorial High School taking on Heritage Hills. Pat Graham, an assistant coach for Evansville Memorial. Trent Sisley on that Heritage Hills team, who is a big-time Indiana target, along with Purdue and a number of other schools, which Memorial's got a hell of a weekend ahead. They turn around on Saturday to play Jeffersonville and Sharon Wilkerson. So what a bunch of storylines that are blended in there over the next weekend. So we've got so much to bring to you coming up. So make sure you keep tuned in, and make sure that you are, even though we've got our great affiliates like 97.7, The Ref, ESPN, The Ref, always the right call down in Evansville, or up in the region, the voice of the region, AM 1230, 104.7 FM, WJOB, and JED TV. And over in Fort Wayne's only sports station, 1380 The Fan. If you cannot listen on one of those affiliates, of course, you can always go to YouTube and find us there, where a ton of people have found their ways to. But it's very important for us if you will like and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, and the like hit the like arrow if you don't mind. But more importantly, hit the toggle, the notifications toggle, so you don't miss anything that is coming up. And we have tons coming up. Our post-game shows that we'll be doing Saturday, of course, coming to you from Hoosier Hanks with Todd Leary after the Kansas game. We'll see what Indiana can get done there. But so just so much happening. Indiana football, we'll talk about that a little later on with Shannon Griffith, but things are going very well, it seems, for Coach Cignetti. Also, I saw that and John just mentioned, his contract has been released. We'll talk about that. How about these college basketball results? Upsets. It doesn't help Indiana as a fan. Indiana fans that their team loses, but let me tell you, look at Northwestern, for example. They just beat Purdue, one of the top teams in the country, top team in the state, or in the conference, and then they lose at home to Chicago State, a 4-9 Chicago State team. A 4-9. Well, they were 3-9. So this was a 3-9 Chicago State team. I'm sure they're Division I, but
they're Division I. They're Division I independent.
They're an independent. Wow.
One of the losingest Division I programs in college basketball. And fun fact too, this is the only Power 6, I guess, in basketball, only Power 6 opponent that Chicago State has faced so far this year. Northwestern.
That's crazy. It's probably without question the biggest win in the history of Illinois State. They called it probably one of the biggest wins in the state of Illinois history. But Northwestern was favored by 24.5. 24.5. Whoever took that came out well. But it goes to show you. I know I've been kind of hard on IU basketball, but with good reason. I'm not on them because they're losing or because of a loss. It's other things that we talk about, and those things are worthy to be talked about. Does that mean Indiana can't turn things around? Of course not. They've got the talent. It's not, it's not the players that I think that we've been talking about. I just don't think that I'm not sure. I don't have the confidence that the players are being put in the best positions to succeed all the way around. Malik Renew and Khalil Ware I think it's benefited for them. But we've got to take a break. Much more coming up. Mike Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald-Times joins us. We'll carry on that conversation and much more right after this break.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Your mic's muted, or not your mic, but like you're on StreamYard settings, you're muted at least.
There we go.
There you go.
Yes, sir. Look at you. Man, he's got his working harder on getting that studio set up, aren't you?
Taking it down. We're moving on this weekend.
Okay.
Oh, you're moving. Gotcha. Well, if you need help, I won't be around, unfortunately. And quickly, my questions I'm going to try to make them my questions short because I never listened to the show. And yesterday, I don't know why. I said, Alexa, pull it up. And it was just on in the background. And I'm like, I never shut up. And so even with when I would have a guest, I'm like, do I still have a guest on in this segment? And then I would finally, I'm like, oh my God. I was dumbfounded. So I'm my questions will be short so you can do all the talking.
Don't worry about it. You're all good.
Oh, dude, you have no idea. I was like, wow.
The only time I ever truly noticed it, Jim, and I guess noticed it a little bit more thereafter, was when you had Dockich on, and he like stopped you in your tracks and said, so I can't remember what he said, but he basically interrupted you talking.
Yeah, he said, this is gonna be a 10-minute question.
Yes, that's exactly. It was something like he was like, I hear this is gonna be a 10-minute question, so I'm just gonna stop you right here.
Yeah. How have you been, sir?
I've been all right. How are you?
I cannot complain. Where not exactly, but where did you end up moving? Where are you going to be moving to?
Bargersville.
Oh, wow. Nice little town.
Yeah, so my wife's going to work out at Indianapolis area, so
yeah, right there, kind of in between. Nice little town, home of damn it, John. What's the baseball coach? Jeff Mercer. Home of Jeff Mercer.
Oh, there you go.
What's your latest piece, by the way?
Just kind of, I did the contract stuff yesterday. Did a bunch of recruiting stuff in terms of like the transfer portal this week, but
well, he certainly getting Carter Smith back. How big is that?
Yeah, that's a big. I mean, that he'd probably be the second one behind McCulley that you'd want for sure.
Here we go.
They're not getting McCulley back, I don't think.
GarnishCatering.com. That's GarnishCatering.com. Garnish Catering is a proud partner of Wow Food Group. This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday. Thank you so much for being with us. We greatly appreciate you. Don't forget, if you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore, and her 2 decades of experience could be the difference between getting the home you want or not. Reach out to her, Cheryl, at IndyHomePros.com. Please welcome in Michael Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald-Times. Mike, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Jim. How are you doing?
Very well. Plenty of things to talk about, especially in regards to IU football right now, which I have to say it has been rare the occasion where during basketball season, Indiana football is a topic.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously the coaching change, I think, shakes things up, and especially there's a lull. I mean, it's finals week, so there's kind of been like a week between games here, so a lot to focus on because of recruiting here in between basketball games.
Yeah, and a lot of players that hit the portal. A lot of those are not going to be coming back, but here in the last couple of days, we have seen a few of those guys announce that they will be coming back, and there have been some important names in that, and maybe none bigger right now than Carter Smith.
Yeah, I mean, your starting left tackle is kind of obviously one of your more important pieces, especially and a guy with multiple years of eligibility left. He played pretty well, obviously, as a redshirt freshman. I think he was second highest graded offensive line with the starters, according to Pro Football Focus. I think I was looking yesterday, gave up 19 pressures, 2 sacks over the course of the season. If you were ranking kind of, the guys you'd want back, or if you're Kurt Signetti, when you kind of looked at the list, I mean, he'd be obviously, first or second in terms of, probably behind McCulley on that list. So, I mean, a big name. Like you said, I think 25 players entered, 9 have verbally committed elsewhere. And some of those, obviously were pretty big Khalil Benson, Matthew Bedford on the offensive line, verbally committed to Colorado. So getting Carter Smith back was a big piece.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's someone else that's still there that hasn't and is a big name, who would that be? I guess Donovan McCulley is not committed elsewhere yet, but I'm not sure that they can get him back.
Yeah, I mean, McCulley would be number one. If the guys that are not committed yet elsewhere, I think Philip Dunham would probably be up there. As the other guy that you want back on defense, because the secondary is very thin right now. So he'd give you a pretty big piece at safety. Kind of looking at the list after that, there an argument can be made for Jalen Lucas, what this new staff could do with him in terms of an offensive weapon. I think he had a bit of a down year offensively, but special teams, you saw what he could do whenever he got the ball in his hands. Something special could happen. So those probably would be the two on the list right now, besides McCulley, that you'd want back that haven't committed elsewhere.
And looking forward to that. And also, we've seen some James Madison commits, of course, decommit there, and then they are heading to Indiana, which is no shock at all. That is something that is very, very familiar. But I guess the most prominent of those would be Alberto Mendoza, the quarterback from Columbus High School in Miami. Just the fact that he's a Florida kid, that keeps the Florida pipeline open just a bit. But bringing in another quarterback is going to be interesting to see how things go next year.
Yeah, I talked to him earlier this week, and he said, they laid out their plan essentially. They're you bring in Mendoza, and then they want to transfer, and if not, they'll take another 2024 quarterback. But their focus is on getting somebody experienced in there to add to the quarterback room. I mean, there's obviously a lot of options right now in the transfer portal. In terms of even the JMU's quarterback last year, Jordan McLeod. So I think they're going to try to bring in a transfer with experience at quarterback. But they definitely want to sign two this cycle. And if they have to sign another 2024, a high school prospect, they will. But yeah, that's the plan right now for Kurt Cignetti.
And I have to tell you, from the things I've sent out on social media, posted the show interest and whatnot, there is genuine interest in Indiana football right now. And I mean, of course, that was there when they had the blip in 2019, 2020, but I've never seen preseason buzz like this. I've never seen anticipation like they have, like there is right now. And that's a great thing, because they mentioned Indiana being a sleeping giant. I don't know that I would go that far. They're a sleeping giant in basketball. They're not a sleeping giant in football. But although I think they can be successful in that sport, and I think that if they put a quality product on the field, the fans will follow, and Memorial Stadium can be a fun and filled place to be on Saturdays.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got some ways to go here in terms of trying to fill out this roster and kind of getting that product on the field. I mean, they still about 50 scholarships, what I have projected for next year, not including kind of the high school commits that they have right now. A bunch of sort of, recommitted to the class. I think about 7 or 8 of the class. Some have already left. So still got a lot of work to do. I think they need to work the transfer portal even more. I mean, only got the one transfer in terms of Justice Ellison from Wake Forest, running back. So I still think they have a lot of spots to fill here before the next couple of weeks, as we kind of start thinking about spring football just here and down the road in a couple of months.
And as far as Kurt Cignetti's contract that was released yesterday, Indiana having to pay yet another buyout for him of $12 million at James Madison.
No, 1.2 million.
Oh, it was 1.2. There you go. I can't see. I'm old. So that's easy. It's easy to handle. But they're getting him at bargain basement price. His yearly salary is going to be between 3.5 and 4 million. Boy, is he the lowest paid coach in the Big Ten?
I didn't look to see where he compared. I mean, obviously there's a lot of escalators in his contract, $100,000 a year, but raise $250,000 retention bonus. I don't think he'd probably be the lowest, but lower than Tom Allen was making after that extension. I mean, makes sense. I mean, he was a very low paid coach in the Sun Belt. I mean, you don't want to bid against yourself. I know he had a contract that would have bumped him up there significantly. That was on the table before he left. But there's no reason to sort of, bet against. You give away money. I mean, he's an inexperienced in terms of SDS, or Power 5 level coach. So I mean, I think I didn't have any problem with kind of the compensation they gave. I thought it was competitive and obviously, laden with bonuses. And, he talked about being successful. And so, if, they make bowl games, he can, really make a lot of money off of that. Basically it was like $400,000 a year ish. Every year they make a bowl game and a year extension.
Yeah, I agree with it. I agree with you. This is how it should be because I think too many times Indiana and many schools put themselves in horrible positions by writing these contracts that are all just favored to one side, and they don't allow for, hey, how about performance? But that also leaves you weary of, hey, what if he's successful quickly and then someone wants to come in and poach him, which always could be the case. That's the only concern about him being paid so near the bottom of the conference.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, if you lose somebody because they're successful at your place, I mean, I think that's the kind of the price you pay. I mean, I think you'd rather have that than your average for years and nobody wants your coach. And there's always, you could always bump him up in pay down the line if he's successful. But to me, if he's good and somebody else wants him, I don't think that's the end of the world. I mean, you get the good seasons that he gives you, and so I think Indiana would take that at this point. If he's gets them bowl eligible and gets them in the top half of the Big Ten or top 6, like his contract spells out and he gets those bonuses. And then we're to take another job. I don't think that's the end of the world. Makes Indiana a more attractive option. You've shown that a coach can come in here and win. So I don't think that would be the worst thing.
Yeah, it's not like he's living on pennies. His contract will pay him a total of $27 million, and that does not include any bonuses or incentives over the 6 years of that contract. But reaching a bowl game like Tom Allen's automatically kicks in a 1-year extension and also a $250,000 raise. So there's plenty of opportunity there. I think that obviously he's happy with the money because it is substantially more than what he was making. And it's just going to be fun to see what he can get done. On the other side of things, Indiana, some of the guys that have come back out of the portal, I've seen that, like I said, over the last couple of days. I think there's going to be a couple more come back once they have really let him and his message settle in. It's a very different message than culture than it was under Tom Allen. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying it's very different. It's like going from a very, very easygoing school to one that is probably not going to be so easygoing. And I think that could be a good thing for Indiana, but some of these players will respond to that and some won't.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you'll see turnover too after the spring once players kind of see where they're at. I mean, these rosters are going to be constantly in flux. I mean, there's 2 portal windows, and so you're going to see, like you said, some people might not like his style or like his message, and there'll be decisions made on both sides, and that the staff will find some players that they don't feel like fits their vision. And so, yeah, I think you're gonna, that's just kind of the nature of coaching changes. It's the nature of college football right now, where your roster, he talked about how 30% of your roster every year is going to kind of flip over at these jobs. So, you're going to constantly see that, but it's just accelerated when you have a coaching change. Players, came in here to play for Tom Allen. Now they're playing for a different guy. And like you said, has already in a short amount of time shown he has a little bit of a different attitude, a little bit of a different approach than Allen's LEO sort of mantra.
Miles Jackson is one that's kind of unusual. He transferred in from UCLA, and then on a couple of days ago announced that he's transferring to Tulsa to play for former Indiana coach Kevin Wilson. But doesn't he have to? Isn't that the deal where he'll have to sit out, or is this another lawsuit coming to the NCAA that we've seen so many of here lately?
Well, the lawsuit was, the stay is, there's a stay right now, so he'd be immediately eligible and wouldn't need the waiver. They've put the waivers on hold, so he'd be fine. And there's
I didn't realize that stay was for everyone. Wow.
Yeah, that's for the NCAA. So he'd be part of that group, I think, unless he graduated. I don't know where he was at in terms of his what year he was, so, or how much academic, if he could leave as a grad transfer essentially, but I don't know. He was a redshirt junior, so he might have not needed one if he graduated.
Correct. Basketball this weekend, Indiana hosting the number 2 Kansas Jayhawks in a game that it's not, no one has used the words must win, but this is a game this is the last opportunity for Indiana to get a noticeable win for their resume in a non-conference game, because they have we've seen what has happened up until then. We know what happened last year at Kansas, and Indiana is not coming into this game with a great fire coming off of the loss to Auburn. But what are your expectations on Saturday?
It'd be hard for them to win that game. We don't know. Obviously, we won't talk to Mike Woodson at all until tomorrow. In terms of Xavier Johnson's status, and I think they've really missed him. I just don't know that they have the firepower right now to match up with a team like Kansas. I think what you want to see is a little more competitive than it was against Auburn. Not to get kind of blown out in your own gym. And I think that'd be the hope for them, I think, right now. I think, and when you look at it, if they lose to Kansas, then close out the rest of their non-conference schedule, clean. I think that's where you thought this team would be kind of going into the main part of the Big Ten schedule. So, it would have been nice for them to, like you said, to sort of kind of get a quality win like that over Auburn, or one of those three, UConn, Auburn, or Kansas. But I still think they accomplished what they needed to. Weren't upset at all and won their first 2 Big Ten games.
Yeah, and it's not like they're playing no one. So this is going to be a very, very difficult game for Indiana. But going forward, even if Xavier comes back, I don't know that he is the answer to all of their – well, he's not the answer to all of their problems that they have been having, which have been multiple, guarding the three-point line for one, and taking advantage of the three-point line themselves, number 2.
Yeah, this team's not going to suddenly start shooting the ball like, that's, I think, out the window, just based on the roster construction. But I think when, he's a key veteran piece that in a key guard in a team that's very thin at the guard position, and so I think they very much need him in place, just to sort of be a steady hand. I think you saw in that Auburn game in the second half they had nowhere to turn to when things started to kind of get shaky, nobody settled the team down. And I think Xavier Johnson is able to do that when he's on the court. Always kind of making headsy plays. And I think they need a guy like that. Having a true freshman starting at point guard, I think is really tough, especially when you have a lot of new pieces trying to gel together. I think Xavier's place in that starting lineup is really, really important, and him playing 30 minutes a game.
Absolutely. What's up next for you, my friend?
Well, like I said, Kansas on Saturday. Excited to see kind of the atmosphere at Assembly Hall. That'll probably be the first time I've been at the stadium when it's sold out. So.
Oh wow! So this is your wow. Well, let me tell you, you might want to take some earplugs. It's going to be a. I assure you that will be a raucous environment on Saturday. And how about the state of Indiana right now? You're going to have Indiana hosting number 2 Kansas, which will absolutely be a crazy environment. You're going to have number 3 Purdue hosting number 1 Arizona at Gamebridge Fieldhouse at 4:30. Time good enough, long enough after that. Unfortunately, the Colts are playing the Steelers at 4:30 at Lucas Oil Stadium on top of that. And also, I don't want to forget about Ball State and Indiana State clashing as well. So what a weekend of sports in the state of Indiana.
Yeah, it should be a good one. And exciting to see, sort of like you said, that sold out stadium this weekend.
Looking forward to it. Mike Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald-Times. Make sure you're giving him a follow and be a subscriber. Mike, thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
All right, we'll talk next week, Jim.
Absolutely. Up next, Tyler Smith from thehoosier.com joins us, and we've got more here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
Morning.
How's it going?
Going well, going well.
Tyler Smith, what do you have for us? Tyler Smith, what do you have for us?
What's going on, Jim?
Oh, you know it, man. Living the dream. Living the dream. Back. Yeah, boy. It would be something. Let me tell you, if they were able to make that a close game, boy, oh boy. Indiana used to be the giant killer. I mean, you can go back and look how many top 5 teams they have knocked off.
I mean, they did it last year twice with Purdue.
Well, I mean, in Assembly Hall.
Discounting the Purdue wins. You did it yesterday, too. Like, those don't mean anything.
No, last year's team is not this year's team, dude. This is a completely different team. And Purdue's a little different than last year. Their guards are a little bit better. They picked up one guy, but that one guy's making a difference. But I don't know. Purdue's kind of looking the same to me.
Yeah, they're a phony. I think they're good.
No,
but
I don't think they're a phony, but
I think people think that they're just, I'll just stop talking because it'll just sound like I'm being biased.
I think they ride. I just think that they ride. It's all about Mount Edie, and teams can. You can. He can't win the game by himself. Number one.
Yeah. All right, here we go, guys.
Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Revesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Hank's Pizza Mac. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday, December 14th. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you greatly. Don't forget, Indiana takes on Kansas Saturday, 12:30 at the Simon Scott Assembly Hall. And after that, over at Hoosier Hanks East off of College Mall Road, the post-game show with Todd Leary after the game with Todd Leary commences. If you're not going to the game, can't get a ticket, just head to Hoosier Hanks, and we'll be there afterwards. Please welcome in Tyler Smith from thehoosier.com. How are you, sir?
I'm great. I'm ready for Saturday after the Auburn loss, and it's been a long break here, so excited to get back to Assembly Hall for a crazy one on Saturday.
It will definitely be that. And looking over the scores from last night, things are getting a little crazy. Out in Las Vegas, number 8 Creighton gets knocked off 79-64. Florida Atlantic was at home to Florida International, and they did what they should do, wiped them off the face of the planet 94-60. Florida Atlantic is a good team. Do not sleep on them. They I think they've lost 2 games. Yeah, one of those was to a close game to Illinois. I forget the other game they lost, but that was a bad loss for them. But BYU beats Denver, which BYU is ranked, people. Brigham Young. This is why Northwestern, of course, gets stunned at home by Chicago State, a 25-point underdog to a 4-19. But BYU, okay, they're ranked 18th in the country. This is why I go on the tangents that I do. I said I wasn't going to talk as much today, and this is the only thing I'm going to get on my little soapbox about. If you can build a program at BYU who has zero, well, I shouldn't say zero, they have very little basketball resources. They have zero basketball tradition. They do not have the fan support that IU has. They do not have the talent in their state that Indiana has. They do not have the NIL capacity that Indiana has. They do not have anything that Indiana has, yet Indiana cannot get to that level. And that is the point that I try to make. And it's not that I want to be negative. Man, these are the facts. You're in year 3 of a new coaching regime that you're supposed to have progress. Each year is supposed to be a little bit better than the year before. Now, once you get to a point, it's just gonna, like whomever it is, it's up and down, but it's progress. I'm not seeing that personally at Indiana. I'm seeing plateau and just back and forth. And Tyler, you can agree or disagree to that.
I agree. I think you've got valid points. Last year there was progress, a little bit of progress from the year before, which was good. They've done some things that hadn't been done in a while. The argument that I don't like that fans often make is, well, there's a bunch of new players and it takes time, and that's true, but there's plenty of other programs that have major turnover every year and they continue to be top teams, especially when you have the portal at your disposal. That should be something that, you can tap into that and maintain your momentum year over year. Now, maybe this team does play well towards the second half and things kind of click. They've got the talent to do that, hopefully. But yeah, it's pretty valid. I think that this should be a team that, with the resources, with the tradition, with the fan base, they should be a top, at least in the rankings, year in, year out.
Yeah, this should not be a rebuild year, especially when you have Kalel Ware coming in when you have Mackenzie Mbako coming in. This is not. I saw someone say this. They were supposed to be middle of the pack. No, they weren't. No, they were not. Guard problems are probably number one, and of course, Xavier being hurt, that is a big part of that, and I understand that. But also the lack of being able to land a guard or guards in addition to that has killed Indiana. There's an open scholarship just because of that reason. So that's what I say there. But Indiana goes into this game on Saturday against a number 2 ranked Kansas team that would love nothing more than to come into Bloomington and do what they're supposed to do, because they're supposed to win this game.
Yeah, I believe it's their first true road game of the year, so that could favor Indiana a little bit. It's going to be a crazy atmosphere, but Ken Pom actually has Kansas by 6 or 7 points, which some fans may be surprised by. I'm not too surprised by it just because of that home effect. But yeah, they've got just a monster starting lineup. They move the ball like you wouldn't believe. They play elite defense. It's going to be a huge test. Even if Indiana plays their best game of the season, it could be a double-digit win for Kansas. But I think because of what I've seen over the years, I think it's a team that will show up and give it their all thanks to that crowd. And I do think it could be a battle, but Indiana has their work cut out for them. That's for sure.
Yeah, Indiana obviously has to defend the 3-point line a little bit better, number one. But this has just been a tired discussion of Indiana's 3-point shooting and their lack of emphasizing it. They do not. It's when a 3-point shot seems to come, it's by accident. It seems like a guy just happens to be open, and the offense seems to be ran too tight to me. And by tight, I mean too far along the 3-point line. There's not enough spacing. And man, I would think with the bigs that they have that can move in and out, that Indiana should have the ultimate roster construction to be able to be the most spaced team on the country or on the floor.
Yeah, you think about, their strengths of having Ware and Renew, but, they could use them, as you said, off-ball screening. There's not a whole lot of cutting. There's not a whole lot of off-ball movement. You mentioned the spacing. It is kind of more of an old school kind of look. They've got some sets where they really get good looks to the post, but, surely they can run some guys off screens and get them open looks. I thought that was a problem even with guys like Kopp and some other guys here that, were kind of catch and shoot where you could set more screens for them. But the only positive of the game the other day was the 4 early 3-pointers. I think, Cups knocking down a couple will help his confidence for the future for sure. But yeah, there's got to be more movement. And if you're playing a team like Kansas, you're going to have to knock some down. I think, 4 or 5 threes probably ain't going to cut it. Even if you're elite from down low against a team like that, they're going to have to knock down, 7 or more. Who knows what that number is, but
yeah, Kansas 9-1 coming into the Simon Scott Assembly Hall. They're the guys that you're going to have to watch out for. DeJuan Harris Jr., he's averaging 6 points a game, but seven assists a game, so he is getting the ball around. Kevin McCullough, he's averaging 19 points a game and 5 assists per game. KJ Adams, who's a forward, 13 points a game and 4 rebounds, but they're guards. Man, you're getting, and I talk about this and people don't believe me. Gabe Cupps is going to be a really good player. He's playing well already. He's doing great things as far as defensively. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes with the ball. He just doesn't score a lot. Now, the last game was different. He broke out. He hit that 3 to start the game, and that's something that they're going to need again, because you look at Kansas, the guards of Kansas, and between them, they're averaging 25 points a game and also 12 assists per game. Those are healthy numbers. And so Indiana has got to get good guard play in this game.
You know, another interesting thing is Kansas really rides their starters, which you know, you and I have talked about of maybe Indiana should do that a little bit more. You know, the
Imagine that.
starting five for Indiana has you know, pretty good net numbers for the year when they're on the floor together. Kansas has one of the lowest minutes per game from their second unit or from anybody from the bench minutes in a game. So that's going to be important if Indiana can get any of those guys in foul trouble, make them have to go a little deeper. But yeah, I really hope Indiana kind of shrinks the rotation a little bit, at least the combinations. Always have a couple starters on the court at all times. But yeah, guard play has got to step up, got to knock down some shots, let the crowd inspire, and hope you can keep it close and put the pressure on the number 2 ranked team.
Well, especially because Kansas is going to be a guard-dominated offense. You've got some newcomers also on this program. That Elmarco Jackson, he's a freshman, but he's averaging over 6 points a game. And Johnny Furphy, he's also a freshman. He's averaging 6 points a game and shooting 40% from behind the arc. That. Then you add Hunter Dickinson to that mix. On top of that, who's averaging over 19 points and 12 rebounds a game. So they're more of a free-flowing shooting team, which is exactly what has given Indiana fits.
Yeah, when you have that balance and you can't really, you know, hone in on any one or two players, I remember as a coach, that's the hardest to guard. I would like playing teams that had one star and not much else. There's a lot of things you could do, but when there's a ton of balance, a lot of guys that could hurt you, 2 guys averaging 19 or more, you know, that's a tough cover. So maybe this extended practice time will be beneficial to them. You know, get that. Obviously, your last game wasn't inspiring for you, but hopefully Woody and the coaching staff really utilize this week and is continuing to do so to prepare because, yeah, it's a doozy of a Kansas team.
And I wonder, coaches – I'm not saying that they don't hear the outside rumblings. They do. And there's no doubt that Woody has really heard the rumblings about his substitution patterns. And because you could tell last week to me in Atlanta, it really hit when that question was asked, because he was like, Look, guys, if you look back, I always do that. Well, that's not the point. It's actually taking a look at it and saying, you know, hey, is this a problem? Because it is. I don't. You look at, said I can't play these guys 40 minutes a game. I get that, but they don't need to rest for that long of a stretch, number one. Number two, they don't all have to rest at the same time. Number three, how many minutes a game did Trace Jackson Davis played last year? A bunch. Probably close, but 37, 38. He played close to 40 minutes because they needed him. Well, they have a deeper team this year, but it's not when they do it. And sometimes it is. You know, you cannot take a hot player out. I was listening to Don again yesterday, and he said, man, when you got a guy that's hot, you ride him. And I don't understand the mentality of stopping that. Archie Miller did the same thing. I didn't get it.
Yeah, I remember going back to, you know, how fans would react to some of Crean substitutions, maybe not as extreme as, you know, like full lines at times, but a guy would get hot and come out just because of kind of the where they were in the game and the minutes and rotation and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I've some of the things have been concerning as far as what Woodson has said. That was one of them early in the year when he was talking about, you know, met with the media over Zoom and talked about 3-pointers and, you know, maybe we'll be the team that doesn't make them and makes the tournament. And a lot of fans were just understandably frustrated of, you know, the goal is not just to be a tournament team, and the goal is, you know, obviously you're going to have to hit threes if you win in today's game. So some concerning comments. They've proved me wrong before as far as picking things up when they look kind of bleak. So hopefully hopefully that'll happen soon. But yeah, you look at the numbers, especially when I think it was Gunn, Banks, and maybe Walker or Sparks, when the three of them are all in at once. Indiana just has a really, really bad total net score, net rating in those minutes.
Well, we'll certainly find out tomorrow or on Saturday. Looking forward to it. And make sure you give Tyler Smith a follow at thehoosier.com. Doing great work there. Look forward to it, brother. We'll see you then.
Thanks a lot. See you soon.
Absolutely. Hey, we've got more Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming up right after this, and we'll be back.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Yeah, is Ja'Kai Newton a guard? I was thinking he was
more of a wing. I think we talked about that yesterday.
But
he has the size of he's a bigger guard if he is a guard, but
and I understand about Jalen Hood-Schifino. I mean, that's valid. He was not at the beginning of the season not expected to be a one and done. Trying to move that stupid thing.
Actually, no. Ja'Kai Newton, he is a pure guard. I don't know why I feel like he's taller than he actually is.
How tall is he?
6'3".
Really?
He's 6'3". Yeah. CJ Gunn's 6'6", which is kind of hard to believe.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
For some reason in my head, I thought he was bigger too. But again, I haven't seen him play.
I did as well. I thought Ja'Kai Newton was a bigger, yes. So it would certainly have been interesting to see Ja'Kai Newton. Yeah. But they also had that open scholarship because they still could not land that extra guard. But there's truth to that. You got two guys out that are guards. Ja'Kai Newton, although a freshman, he would have added athletic ability that they don't have. And that's part of the problem.
It does blow my mind that you couldn't at least. I mean, I guess you need to have the right fit, but I feel like you could have found somebody to take that scholarship.
Man, for 1 year, I don't understand how you don't just scour it and say, I don't care, we're taking somebody.
And I guess what the other part of it too is you have with all this COVID extra year stuff, some people have more players than they would have anyway. And then, man, next year's the last year of the COVID year, but I feel like it needs to be this year. I feel like this COVID year stuff's been going on forever.
Oh, God, it drives me insane. If I see one more seventh-year player, I'm going to throw up.
No, I mean, you're going to see it next year because next year's the final year that you can have those guys. The guys who were freshmen whenever that started.
That could be true, Forrest. That
probably
could be
doesn't whine
true.
as much either.
Well, he did do the interview that we had without a shirt on, if you remember.
I do remember that. I wasn't on for that. You did that without me, but I remember.
Oh my God. I wish you could pull that up just to show it. That was hilarious.
Excuse me. All right, here we go.
And enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Speed Radio here on this Thursday. It's been a fun show already. Mike Niziolek, Tyler Smith. Plenty of good conversation there. Are we waiting for Mr. Denary? I forget. I know he just landed in D.C.
Yeah, he hasn't confirmed whether or not he will come on, but it wouldn't surprise me if he is unable to show up today.
Okay, yeah. we were just talking to him via text. His plane, that was at 2:02 a.m. He sent that. So plane had landed in Washington. They're out to play I started to say the Bullets. Man, the Wizards. Yeah, he may not make it on. Rough day for Chris, rough or a long night. So if he doesn't, that's okay. Plenty to talk about. Matt Rule picking up quarterbacks out of Nebraska, man. He's serious about getting that program turned around. I think the Big Ten is going to be fun next year. It sucked this year. Let me be the first person to say that. But, man, these programs like Indiana, new coach, really, I think Indiana is serious about football. Not serious like to the level of Texas A&M or, one of those Texas schools, but they're serious about being a player. They know they have to be. That's just not it's no longer an option. And I do believe that they are serious about it. I tell you what, I put a comment somewhere yesterday that I wouldn't be surprised that in the next couple of years, IU football, which has always been down here as a problem, in IU athletics, elevates itself to where it's not the biggest problem. And, you've got two major sports, men's basketball and football. This is not about being sexist or anything else. This is just about being real and where money comes from TV and all of that. Football is the engine that drives the train. I say it all the time. At Indiana, that's not the case. I think that I can see a scenario, if things continue the way they are, that IU football raises its success level. If Indiana basketball continues like this, there's no reason for it to, though. I understand why fans get so upset. There's no reason. They have as good a resources as there are in college basketball. NIL, as good as there is in college basketball. Facilities, as good as there is in college basketball. Fan support, as good as there is in college basketball. As a matter of fact, there's probably no better fan support. I don't care what other programs say. I travel to these games. I see it. I was in Las Vegas to see it. That's the most stunning one. To be in Las Vegas and Indiana playing Arizona, which is 2 hours away, and to outdraw Arizona by the margin they did was absolutely stunning, something I'll never forget. I can't say they outdrew Auburn down in Atlanta, but if they didn't, it would have surprised me. The same with UConn in Madison Square Garden a couple weeks ago. And this is with Indiana not even having that level of success. Let me tell you, if they were up there, it would be crazier than you can even imagine. So Indiana basketball is a sleeping giant if they can get it woken up. It is a juggernaut because of what all is behind it. If you can get that ball rolling. And I'm not saying I have the answers. I'm not saying I know Jack. I ask a lot of questions. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to question things when they don't go right. That's what my job is. I'm not a fan. I have to look at it from a point of neutrality. And if not, it would just be kumbaya and rainbows and unicorns all the time. And it's not reality. And frankly, I would feel like a sellout.
Oh, let me ask this, Jim. Do you think fans can't be objective, or do you think fans only look at things with a positive lens? Because I don't think that's the case.
For the most part, I do not. For the most part, no, I don't. That does not go for everybody. Of course not. But for the most part, no, I don't. Every year people think, oh, Indiana's going to win the Big Ten or Indiana's going to the Final Four. I saw that so much. No, they're not. Are they going to even make the tournament this year? We'll see if they can get better and get better guard play. But, I think that they just over expect, which is what fans are supposed to do. That's okay. You're supposed to be supportive. But there was somebody on Twitter that's just been, finally I just said, I give up. Was complaining about the fact that there was no pep band or cheerleaders down in Atlanta and that how much of an advantage they gave Auburn. And I'm like, man, when you're competing, you don't see or hear that stuff. You don't, that is blocked out. You should be focused. The only level of that I could put it at is when I competed in pro rodeo and roping. There's so much going on, the announcer, all, man, I didn't hear any of that. You're so focused and locked in on what you have to do or what you're supposed to do, what you're about to do, that all that's outside noise. That's outside noise. Now, does being in a home arena versus an away arena make some difference? Well, of course it does. That's a ton of noise there. But that's not, I'm not talking about that. We were just talking about a pep band and cheerleaders, which I'm like, that's not why Indiana allowed Auburn to shoot 48% on 14 to 29 3-pointers. That's not why Indiana allowed Auburn to turn 12 turnovers into 15 points. That's not why Auburn's bench outscored Indiana's 40 to 21. It did not have anything to do with the pep band or cheerleaders. And it certainly wasn't because they had a visitor feeling. They were the designated home team, and I promise you there was more. I think there were more Indiana fans than Auburn fans. They just didn't have a lot to cheer about after the 8-minute mark. Once that 12-point leads just went away, wasn't a lot after that. So, but Indiana is a sleeping giant in basketball. And if they can ever get it turned back towards, I know that they've had some success in the last couple of years under Mike Woodson. He got them to the tournament 2 years ago where they lost big and ugly to St. Mary's. Then last year they make the tournament officially and get embarrassed by a Miami team. And that was supposed to be what changed. That was supposed to be, all right, we've got to get way more athletic and the offense has to be different. How much of that change are you seeing? The offense is the main thing that I'm still, again, I'm not a coach, but I can ask the question, why is the offense, why do you not prioritize? And I don't want to say prioritize to where it's the most important thing on the offense, but why is the 3-point shot not a bigger part of the offense is, I guess, what I would ask. Why are there not set plays run to get guys like Mackenzie Mbako good, clean 3-point shots? He's a hell of a shooter. He's just a hell of a shooter. Why are these guys not taking it upon themselves to work harder to get 3-point shots? I don't know that they're working hard enough off the ball, but that's not necessarily their fault. It's how is this offense being run? Again, not a coach. I'm not in practice, so I don't know. But Royville thinks fans are more objective than the media. Brother, that's where I'm going to have to completely agree to disagree with you there. There's that statement is so far from being true.
He may be messing with you, honestly. I don't know anybody who would have that. And I don't want to say that you're trolling us, but like that doesn't. Do you even know what the media's role is if that's the case?
Well, yes, he does, but I think what he's saying is sometimes it depends on who you're talking about as well. The national media has a completely different take a lot of times.
Yeah.
Because they're not around. They're not around the program. They're not around the people. They're not around the players. They watch from afar. But you heard Chronic Hoosier say on this show this week that right now Indiana is exactly what the national media had pegged them to be. And that's because nothing is proving them wrong. And that is why. So, yeah, I really disagree there. Now, I think that there is a difference between the national media and what I call the beat media, people like myself who are actually on the beat, who go to games, cover press conferences, talk to the players, attend the games and all that. There's a lot more to see. There's a lot more to know, a lot more to keep up with. But it's just Philip says Jeff Goodman's theory is that highly successful NBA players aren't good college coaches. Well, I think that's dumb on assuming that, period. But whether or not you're a successful coach, Mike Leach didn't play the game. He was an attorney. Would you like to have had him as your football coach? I would have, just to have him around, just to hear him talk. But speaking of talking, let's take a break. Shannon and Griffith will join us next, and we'll do some talking. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends at Reynolds Family Dentistry down in Sellersburg. You need that championship smile, go see Dr. J. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Good day, sir.
Howdy. How you doing?
Well, I tried to hook up my Roadcaster, and John couldn't hear me, so I'm like, okay, another time.
You're going to have to find somebody. It's plug and play. I'll say that much. It's plug and play, but it took me a little bit to get used to, and I'm still dealing with some issues with it. But
I plugged it in, and it showed up, but maybe I needed to go back and make sure that the mic was coming through everywhere.
Yeah, it's for me at least. It was, like I said, a little bit of plug and play. But I'm still dealing with some things, you know.
Like what?
Well, I've used StreamYard before, which is a good platform. I do another podcast with StreamYard, but I've been using Ecamm, which is a Mac-based studio production type of software that's pretty good. But when I have guests on, I'm getting echo, and I can't trace it back. It's getting to the point of frustration. And even with the company the software that I'm using, they're having the same issues with some people using Roadcast and getting, when you have a guest on, getting the feedback and echo on the broadcast. So yeah, it's been a little frustrating.
And I was thinking, it would have been good, John, if you did have this, because that way the show could run through the Roadcaster and you could control the sound of everybody else.
I won't be able from StreamYard. Have you still about the echo stuff? I have echo cancellation on here.
No,
yeah.
Well, no, what I'm talking about is making, like, when Dylan's on, his sound is a little boxy, I guess you'd call it.
That's just his setup.
I get that, but with this, you can kind of adjust. You can adjust that sound. You can add bass to his voice, you can alter his sound to make it sound better. But I can't do that since the show is not coming through me.
Okay.
Sorry, John. I just added another hour to your day.
No, it's okay. Anytime somebody comes on and their setup sounds like they're from straight out of Howard Stern studio. It makes it seem like we're amateur hour for some reason.
Oh no.
All right, here we go. Whoops. Here we go.
812-824-4040. The Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday. It's December 4th. Thank you so much for joining us. No matter how you're listening on our affiliates like 99.7 ESPN, The Ref in Evansville on the river, or the Region Rats on 1230 AM, 104.7 FM WJOB, and of course, over in Fort Wayne on the only sports station in Fort Wayne, 1380 The Fan, where you can catch Caleb and Kenny each morning, and the Sports Rush immediately after Indiana Sports Beat. And sometimes you'll hear this guy, Shannon Griffith, on there. But you can also always catch him at Hoosier Tailgate, his podcast regarding Indiana football. And there's starting to be more and more news to talk about football-wise, Shannon, for Indiana.
Yeah, when you have a change in staff, I think it's a little bit more focused in the efforts of what's occurring. Of course, recruiting kind of dominates the airways at this time of year with the transfer portal and all the things that have encompassed college football now that things have changed.
Yeah, and good news we've seen for Indiana as a lot of names went into the portal, and I knew that a lot of those guys weren't coming back. You already had guys like Brendan Sorsby commit to Cincinnati. We just saw that daggone it, who was it that went to? I just said his name a minute ago. Is going to Tulsa to play for Kevin Wilson.
Miles
Jackson, which
yeah.
He must be a grad student, because that would be his third school.
Yeah.
And so he probably has graduated. But regardless of that, there's been some good names coming back already.
Carter Smith.
Carter Smith is the biggest of those we talked about earlier. That's huge for Indiana. I mean, because they lost so much of or potentially losing so much of their offensive line, which they had already had some problems with. But that's your anchor, man. I mean, I know it's on the other side of the line as well, but to me, in football, baby, you've got to be good on the line, especially to me, number one is the offensive line. If you don't have a good offensive line, I don't care how good your quarterback is. I don't care how good your running back is. They're not going to get much of an opportunity to operate. And so job number one has to be sustaining this offensive line for Indiana.
Yeah. And, Bob Stead had, finally, got comfortable as the year went along with the guys that he was playing. And you could see that progress up front, but you lose Bedford and Benson now. I think they're both going to Colorado, if I'm not mistaken. And so those are two key components that you lose. Smith, by all means, was probably the necessary one that you needed to keep, because one, he's a young kid, and number two, he is only going to get better, being that he was only a redshirt freshman last year. So, I don't know what they got in the pipeline as it pertains to their depth. I know that's always been probably the Achilles heel with Indiana, is their first five are pretty decent. Once they got into the depth issues, that's when they started running into a lot of problems. So the more they can solidify that, the better they'll be. And like I said, Coach Bobstead, he's a really good coach. But it all goes by what you have in the hopper there that's going to make you a good coach or a bad coach. it's that difference,
And what makes that even more difficult, as you just pointed out, having that your solid line to begin with, but having the guys behind that. So it's a double duty for Coach Signetti, and coming on the heels of his contract being announced, which nothing that jumps off the page for you to go, oh wow, hey, he's probably one of the, well, I know he's one of the lowest paid coaches in the Big Ten, but it's a substantial raise for what he has done,
Right.
For what he has been getting. But success will alter that. We've seen that before. Once you have, if Indiana football is succeeding, they will give him an extension and do what they need to do. But it's looking good right now. For one thing, there's excitement amongst Indiana fans,
Right.
and it seems genuine. And there has not been much outside of 19 and 20 that I've seen this kind of excitement with Indiana football.
Yeah, and I think the big reason too with that is his track record. I think people can see a history of success. Kevin Wilson came, he was an assistant coach, and Tom was an assistant coach. So they really didn't have a track record that they brought to the table. Where Coach Signetti now, he's got a track record of success at many different places. And he's worked more with less, I guess you could say, in some of those places that it's produced where he's had winning records. The big thing about his contract that I thought was interesting is if they get to the bowl games, the one big thing is it triggers like a $500,000 potential budget increase for his staff personnel and assistants.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah. Now, of course, that's all got to be signed off on by the, Scott Dolson there. But that's one big thing that automatically raises that pool to keep assistants potentially from going other places if they have a, big success. So I thought that was an interesting component in the contract, as you would expect. I mean, Indiana's contracts are more reward for success than they are upfront rewarded in terms of dollars and cents of it. But he's making a good chunk of change, and he's good and covered. And the assistant pool, I think, was even better for that. And, they're hitting the ground running. I mean, they're scrambling right now because of not the deadlines, but the first signing date, and doing the double duty of trying to keep kids from going elsewhere, especially those ones that could have a potential impact like they did last year. Haven't heard much on Macaulay of late. I know Lucas has gotten some feelers and offers out there, but, I would hope that they could keep one of those two guys, but I don't think it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Did you go to Fort Wayne Northrop?
I did. I'm a Bruin.
Well, Jamie says hello. One of our listeners said, ask Mr. Griffith if he went to Fort Wayne Northrop. If so, tell him he says hello. There you go, Jamie. And you can tell him hello back.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jamie. Appreciate that. Yeah. I was a 1986 grad of Fort Wayne Northrop up here in the great city of Fort Wayne, Indiana. But, and I think they got some key commitments that he was able to flip, from some of the kids that he was recruiting down there at James Madison, the one kid being the quarterback out of Miami, and his name is escaping me right now.
Alberto Mendoza.
Yeah. I've had a chance
two-time state champion, just won another state title.
Yeah. Had a chance to watch some film on him. Good, solid kid, throws it well, and also has escapability. So he brings a dynamic, where, he's a mobile quarterback. And I think in today's game, you've got to have quarterbacks that can also be a threat to run the football, that will keep defenses honest. And that's one thing that I think Indiana, from an offensive philosophy, the run game has to have some quarterbacks mixed to it. And that just helps keep defenses from, packing the box and daring you to throw it all the time and, going to shut your run game down. So I know that Coach Cignetti and what they did at James Madison, they've always had that type of kid that can be a threat on the perimeter as well, and running the ball and throwing it. So that was a big cog that they got. I'd like to see him get the Cherry kid out of Indy, but we'll see on that one. He's got a lot of offers. I know he had Duke as a commit, but with the upheaval of Elko going to Texas A&M, that kind of brought him back into the mix potentially for Indiana. And, he has his staff in place. I mean, he's got everything rolling, and he's not bogged down by trying to who he's going to hire next or in that regard. So they've got an identity that kids can see who they're going to be coached by. And it's a good young staff. I think that's another thing that I've noticed is the young guys that are not too far along in their profession, but the relatability factor and recruiting and establishing those relationships, not only with high school coaches throughout the Midwest and some of the South is important. And then, of course, the relationships those guys can connect with kids, I think, is huge as well.
Absolutely. And I want to go back. That takes me back to you talking about the assistants and how important it is. His and his name is escaping me. The quarterback's coach.
Tino Sunseri, I think is how you pronounce it. Yeah, Tino.
He seems to be really an attractive coach to these kids. He's young and dynamic. Mm-hmm. I saw them put out a social media piece on the quarterbacks that they have developed. Yeah. That they take great pride in that.
Absolutely.
But that is also something Indiana has not been able to say. They have not developed players. Mm-hmm. You've got to put players into the NFL. And I'm not saying you've got to have 10 guys going like Ohio State, but you have to consistently put somebody in the NFL. If you're not, then you're not developing talent, and you're not giving kids a reason to go to that school.
Yeah, and I think for places like Indiana, especially now, too many of their kids, when they come here, and this happens to the mid-majors as well, they have a fantastic year. They jump in the portal to see their value, but they also are looking at who can help me get to that next level. So if I go to USC or Auburn or Alabama, I'm going to have a great chance, but IU loses a kid like that. So now it is imperative when they've got those kids that they've developed and they're getting production out of them, is trying to keep them at Indiana and not getting into this, free agency period, as I like to call it, where they lose a guy that ends up going somewhere else because of what you just explained there. They see their advantages not only monetarily go up, but the opportunity to be on a bigger stage perhaps and get a better look in the NFL. But sometimes I think it gets overblown. I think NFL will find you no matter where you're at if you're a good player. They don't really care other than how good a player you really are and how can you fit into their system and things of that magnitude. But you're right. NFL availability for a kid is important. And I think Indiana can do that. That piece that you're talking about, I think it was labeled the arms that Coach Cignetti has been involved with throughout his coaching career, because he had Phillip Rivers in there as well. And if I remember correctly, Coach Cignetti was at North Carolina State when Phillip Rivers was there, if I'm not mistaken. And that's how that piece came together with all those individuals. And then you talked about the success, I think, last time, is the number of quarterbacks that have become not only first team all conference, but conference players of the year at James Madison. So Coach Cignetti and Tino, that's a good combination that they've proven here over the last few years.
Yeah, and there's pressure on him to get you've got to be able to field a competitive team next year. I don't think anyone expects him to go 8-4 and do this, that, or the other thing. But I think 6-6 is still going to be a mark that is looked at for a couple of reasons. Number one, because Indiana has 8 home games next year.
I know
that is huge.
Unheard of.
I mean, well, not only that, you could not ask for a better situation for a new coach.
No
Purdue,
question.
you saw what happened at Purdue with Ryan Walters coming in. He's a good coach. Of course, that I think that him leaving Illinois is why Illinois took a drop, is they took away their defensive coach. Purdue went through their first year troubles. You will expect that from Indiana, but you're going to want more. And especially with 8 home games, 3 of those games being those non-conference 3 wins, it's not it will not be out of the question to ask for 3 wins out of those 9 Big Ten games.
Yeah, and like I said, having 8 home games is kind of unheard of. And, sometimes the schedule works against you. Sometimes it works in your favor. Him having 8 home games as a first-year head coach in the Big Ten will be a very, very big topic of conversation as terms of motivation with players and coaches and such, that they can make a huge splash if they can protect their home field. And having those games at home, the 6-6 mark, like you talked about, that's kind of the bowl eligibility target. But as well as I do, Cignetti's thinking we're going to win all 8 at home right now. He's not going to look at the thing and say, well, we should beat them. So if we can be, 5-3 at home, we're good. His mindset's winning those 8.
And that's of uber importance. You have to have that attitude, and that is an attitude that Cignetti has, and that's going to be a little bit different. And I'm not saying that Indiana didn't say, "Hey, we're going to win this game" when they go out to play, but there's a difference between saying it and actually thinking it, believing it, and living it.
Yep.
And I'm not sure that they've been in all of that situation. You've been a coach, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You have to actually believe. If you're in the 4th quarter and you're down by 10, you have to actually believe that you're going to come back and win, that this is not out of your control. And that is something that is very, very difficult to get across to guys that are on teams that have not had the greatest of success.
Yeah, and the big thing is coaches can, you can give great lip service to that theory that you just talked about. The question of it is can you have that belief and then project that belief in a contagious way to not only your staff and coaches and everybody in the building, but the players, because they're the ones that'll sniff out, the BS from the true belief. And I think that's what separates him in a lot of ways, is that his belief in not only in preparation of his teams, but making that belief felt and heard throughout the corridors of the football stadium and that with the kids, and then it permeates out to the fans, is something that he does quite well. And I believe that's where the genuine aspect of his personality comes through, when he talks about winning and what it takes to win and how you win one score games, like he emphasized in his press conference. So those are the things that he's done at all the places that I think may separate him in a lot of ways from those that have been in that same chair before in Indiana. And I think it's a contagious, contagious characteristic. And when you can feel that way and you can believe that way, it's a big plus in your favor being a coach.
Well, we'll see how it continues to go this is December 14th. Tomorrow, the last day of the early signing period or
20? The 20th is the official, but I think, they'll wrap some things up here because then they go into a little bit of a dead period there right before the holidays.
And then the portal doesn't open again until, is it March?
Yeah,
April 15th, I believe. I thought it was April 15th.
Yeah, it's usually right after everyone's spring ball, depending on when and how it falls for different teams. But mostly by that April date, everyone's pretty much done, and that's kind of the final opportunity.
We will certainly look forward to talking about it more, man, as it's always a blast. Shannon Griffith, you can find him at Hoosier Tailgate and also give him a follow as well. And sometimes they're filling in on 1380 The Fan. So, Shannon, thank you, sir. Look forward to it again next week, brother.
All right, partner. We'll see you. Have a good weekend.
You as well. Hey, that's going to wrap it up for us today on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Big thanks to Mike Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald-Times, Tyler Smith from the Hoosier.com. We'll have Kristen Airy back next week as he is traveling, of course. You just met Shannon Griffith there, of course, and grateful to him as well. Tomorrow, do not forget Bob Kravitz, the incomparable Bob Kravitz, of course. Zach Osterman from the Indy Star. Let's see. I'm not sure if we have Casey Bartley or not, but Pat Graham, former Indiana player, assistant at Evansville Memorial. Sharon Wilkerson, former teammate, former Indiana Hoosier, head coach at Jeffersonville High School. They play each other on Saturday. We'll have them both on together tomorrow. Looking so forward to that. But tomorrow night, Evansville Memorial takes on Heritage Hills and Trent Sisley. So we'll keep our eyes open for that as well. Hey, I can't thank you guys enough. It's been a great day as always, mostly because of you and the guest and John for keeping us between the white lines. Without you guys, we wouldn't have a reason to be here. Until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.